Baptism of Fire, the fifth, I believe, Witcher book I have read. Now, some fans have continually warned me this series gets worse as it goes on, some complaining that the more you pull away from Geralt, overall the quality dips. And fortunately for them, Baptism of Fire I found engaging throughout, even the very few parts that did pull away from Geralt's perspective. I love every character presented here, and no quality dip can be detected by me whatsoever. In fact, the author did something fairly bold here I respect enormously. And without getting into spoilers, we're going to go ahead and talk about the fact that this book is a harsh examination overall of the ramifications of war. Again and again, Geralt and his companions encounter just monstrous acts being done by humanity. A mixture of soldiers, bandits, people fleeing war, and just terrible people taking advantage of this situation and people who are victims of it. There's already been a theme throughout the series that people can be monsters too, but Baptism of Fire turns that notch up without kind of jumping the shark. There's no feeling of, well, this is too much, this is unrealistic. No, a lot of this feels like stuff humans actually can do because it largely is. It's based in things that have happened in our past. A lot like the Poppy War did, you find echoes of real historical events throughout here. And the Middle Ages was a barbaric time, and this examination was executed wonderfully. We also do get an addition of a couple of characters within this story, my personal favorite being Regis. Without any spoilers, Regis is a take on a classic character idea and redoing how he can be perceived and what his deal overall is, especially his position in the world and life, which was my favorite part of his character. There are a few other themes brought up of destiny and chosen ones that are being more and more massaged into the larger story here. There's been this ominous something building throughout the series, and Baptism of Fire is really the arising of that something coming to the forefront of the story, and I loved it. Having that kind of rising tension during this horrific war-torn time makes everything mix in this dreadful way. So you as the reader just have this growing pit forming in your stomach. It's awesome. Normally when I read books like this, I can at least understand where some fans' criticisms come from. Dresden Files, for example, I'm right there with them in terms of the quality dip that happens and hopeful pickup after book 2, 3, and maybe 4. But I just really don't know where people who complain about The Witcher are coming from. I find everyone engaging. I've said this before and I'll say it again, but every character is introduced perfectly. Usually they're first introduced through Geralt's eyes, and he has such a well-established character. How he interprets them and acts with them really builds them for you as the reader. So if you do end up jumping to their perspective, it feels like you're filling a pair of shoes that might not be what you're used to, but you have an idea of what they are. It's not that hugely jarring, oh my god, now I'm in this random person who we haven't followed yet's perspective, and you need to, as a reader, figure out how they see the world and what their deal is. What's done here is really brilliant through the writing of setting them up, building them for you, and then putting you as the reader in their feet throughout that process. It makes the whole transition smoother. In fact, the author here is really a master of setup, in my opinion, because yes, you can feel things are being done, there's little pieces getting put into place, but it's hard to spot the wider puzzle. A metaphor I like to use is most big plot twists, or just plots in general in fantasy books, are like 10 playing cards laying on a table that have some kind of pattern to tell you what's going to be next. And in a poorly written fantasy book, after maybe even just 2 or 3 cards, you can go, oh, I know the pattern. Maybe they're all diamonds, maybe it's 2, 3, 4, something that simple. In a slightly more complex fantasy book, there's a little more nuance. Maybe it's, oh, it's always going to be Jack, Heart, Spade, odd number, Jack, Heart, Spade, odd number. But The Witcher, it's very rare to spot the pattern before the 8th or 9th card comes up and the whole hand is almost revealed. And it's not like the author's deliberately subverting expectations, it's just that his stories don't fill tropes. They're fresh and original while not having that feeling of reaching and being odd within a fantasy world, especially because this is not your typical fantasy world. The Witcher's world feels so this is more prevalent than ever in Baptism of Fire because of that setting I talked about. This intense ramifications of war, walking among the victims setting. Can't help but hear the echoes of what we have really done as people in the past. Spoilers starting now. So Regis is a vampire. In fact, he's some kind of super powerful high vampire, and the idea of this was kind of fully realizing and putting that spotlight of the idea that the real monsters of this world can be people. Because vampires in fantasy are typically the end-all be-all of evil. It's really rare to find them represented as good guys, also with good writing. And Regis is a good guy. In fact, as he's talking to Geralt and Dandelion and their other companion, whose name I can never remember, he is really one of the most relatable, easy to talk to people, and they make a point of highlighting this. Turn that around and look at how the interactions with your average person go for this party. It's rare for them to find someone who seems to just be a good person. In fact, Geralt is having some issues with not prejudging people based off nation, and it makes him flawed and human. He's seen a lot of terrible things come from certain countries, and he just starts assigning prejudice, whether right or not. It's just the full realization of an idea the author has floated before, and I thought it was executed well, and it was something that could have come across so corny and so ham-fisted, but it just wasn't, because it was based in who these characters are, and it made this book's message come fully complete. That little click happen without it being like, oh, okay, I hate this is obvious. It just worked. Baptism of Fire is my new favorite Witcher book, to be honest. And I'm gonna go ahead and make a bold claim here. Even if the next couple of books in the Witcher series are like 5s and 4s out of 10s, The Witcher has cemented itself as probably either my third or second favorite fantasy series of all time. And if the rest of the books stay at this quality, it could bump its way up even a little further to a solid 2 to batting for the #1 spot. Liar! Because it's impossible to deny the quality presented here. I can't remember a modern fantasy novel that's this grounded, this dark and gritty, yet comes across not over the top, really well, just a human approach and characters that are solid, a plot that makes sense. And yes, there are these wider themes that are starting to emerge that maybe are going to fall into these tropes. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I doubt it'll be boring or poorly handled with the quality that's done so far. Overall, I just love it. And I'm really curious, if you have read the Witcher series, let me know your ranking of the books so far. Whether you finished them or not, up until the point in the series you are, how do you feel about them? I'd like your favorite to least favorite, so I know as a gauge, am I about to get into the best part of the series or the worst? Anyway guys, that's it for me today. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here, and have a good one, y'all. Peace!